All right, welcome to another program from IEPPV. I am Troy Miller. I am going to be your host. I got David Schulman standing in the wings as the co-host because I'm sitting in my truck in Morro Bay waiting for the moon to come up. So I may take my leave for a few minutes if it looks amazing. Otherwise, I'll hang out with you. Tonight, we're going to be talking about image competition and the challenges that it faces. Specifically, when we talk about image competition within the PPA, PPC affiliate bubble. And it is a bubble, so if you're not familiar with that, we're going to talk about that a little bit. Peter and I both are master photographers. We earned our masters at PPA. We both been on the cover of PPA magazine. Michael, I don't think you've got your master's yet, but I think that you're working towards it. So we all have a little bit different perspective. I'm a full-time wedding photographer. This has been 30 years for me, I think, this year. And so I've had a lot of time to play in photography there. Peter and Michael, I'm going to have you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves real quick. Peter, you go ahead and go first, and then we'll have Michael.
Yep, Peter Levshin, travel, photojournalism, portrait, everything except weddings, because weddings you'd have to be insane to take photos of. You couldn't pay me enough.
Thank you, Peter. And Peter did go on a wedding with me once, and he bailed, right? As
no, I stayed right to the end, and I was scarred for life. And I said I would never do it again, even though you paid me
absolutely nothing.
You paid me nothing.
Michael, go ahead and give us a quick introduction of you and include your affiliations too with,
I'll do that.
Colorado.
Yep, great, sure will. Michael Rhino. I live in Colorado. I'm actually a member of IEPPV for the last 2 years. You haven't seen me here very often because, as Troy mentioned, I belong to a couple of other affiliations. The one that I just picked up a camera about 6 years ago, and right away wanted to learn how to use it, so I joined the Lone Tree Photography Club. That's where I sort of learned a lot of the initial skills in that here in Lone Tree, Colorado. And our meetings are first and third Wednesdays of each month, right at 7 o'clock Mountain Time, which happens to be 6 o'clock Pacific Time. So the reason you haven't seen me on here very often is because I was president of the Lone Tree Photography Club for the last 2 years and still on the board there. Other affiliations that I have been with Professional Photographers of Colorado, which is a PPA affiliate out here in Colorado. I've been there for a little over 2 years and currently am president of that club. So between the Lone Tree Club and that club, and whenever I can get involved with IEPPV, a couple of other things that I do with them. This Week in Photo, TWIP, that I think some of you are also, in fact, I know some of you are part of that group, keeps me really busy with the photography world. Prior to, I guess this last year, I retired from a, 30-something year corporate banking career. So the reason why I did that was because I wanted to do much more of this going forward. So as far as photography, I do primarily landscape, wildlife, nature. That's been my history, but just really love the outdoors. But I'm looking forward to what I've been doing recently is learning a little bit more about flash, off-camera flash, and portrait photography.
Fantastic. And it's nice to see some really familiar faces in here from TWIP. So hello to everybody. TWIP is This Week in Photo, for you guys that don't know. Owned and run by Frederick Van Johnson. We're several of us are part of that community, and that's actually how I met Michael. And so, being part of a really good group is very helpful too. So for those of you that are part of that community, even after this program, if you have questions about this stuff, don't hesitate to reach out to us. This is something that we're all passionate about. So we'll talk about that. So, all right. So let's really dive in. So the purpose of this conversation is one, I want to encourage everybody to get into competition at whatever level. And I know that it can be really rough, and a lot of people get hesitant to do that for various reasons, but we want to kind of try to break you of that, and then kind of talk about the positives and negatives and how you might navigate competition. So I'll kind of have all three of us are going to kind of tell you why we like competition and what the challenges are. But for me, I didn't like competition in the beginning because I felt nobody understood my work. And why would I enter images if they don't understand my work? And so I'm not going to do that, right? I'm just going to be the artist and I'm going to go along. And then there was an individual in one of our groups that I felt needed to be taught a lesson. And so I entered competition to knock them out. And over time, I realized, you know, even though the competition itself I thought was kind of narrow-minded in scope, it forced me to get into that lane, and it forced me to learn how to create an image. And that was what I started to take away. And I thought, okay, I can learn from this. I can get better at building an image for a judge. If I can build images for judges, I can build images for picky clients. You know, so for me, it was that learning process. I wasn't so worried about the awards. I was more worried about, you know, how well will I do. Peter, I know that you're a competition addict. So why don't you let us know a little bit about, you know.
Okay, so I'm been in the publishing advertising business for 35, 40 years. And I would hire photographers to do different journals, different books and so on. And then probably 12 years ago, I got into a bit of an altercation with one of my really good friend photographers. And he basically said, you know, if you think you can do better, why don't you? So then I thought, okay, I do a lot of traveling. I go to some exotic places. I should, you know, get a good camera and start taking photos. Back in 2010, Ramiro Gaitan out at Tri Community in West Covina there, he said, you know what, if you want to, you know, get better as a photographer, you need to join competitions. I had no idea what he was talking about. So I joined PPLAC, put a couple of pictures in. And at that time, I thought, you know, I'm a really good photographer. I've had work published. People say nice things about my work. Got very low marks. What I've learned since then, basically, is that my photography and artwork, or whatever you like to call it, has improved 1,000% because image competition shows you all the things that you don't see, can't see, don't want to see, and gives you a perspective of that this image would be better if you did this, this, and this, or if you changed, you know, the cropping, or you changed it into black and white, and so on. So I would encourage anybody that wants to be a better photographer or better image maker is absolutely competitions. But again, the biggest thing is that you can't take it too personally. You know, for the first couple of years, I cried a lot because people would say, you know, things that I took personally about the photography, but they are not, because they don't know you. They're giving you feedback on what would make the photograph, image, artwork better. So based on that, if you take it and learn from it, then you can actually have some fun. It's addictive, and you get to meet a lot of just really, you know, like-minded, fun people. So most definitely, both Troy and I have been to competitions where he's gotten 79s for 4 pictures and I got 80 plus. The next competition, I got 79s and 78s and he got 80s and 90s. So again, it just depends on the judges and it depends on what you submit. But it's the best. If you really want to be a better photographer, absolutely join image competitions.
Yeah, and I can attest to the fact that Peter is driven. This man goes around the world to go photograph trees because he's like, I'm going to enter that in competition. That's what I'm going to do. It's going to look amazing, right? Yeah. So, oh yeah, it's coming up. The moon. So for those of you that don't know, I'm sitting in my car waiting for the moon. It's just now coming up. I don't know what it's going to look like. Michael, what would tell us a little bit about your experience with image competition, and then what we'll do is we're going to dive into some topics. And for those of you that have questions as we go along, at the bottom, click raise your hand, and let's call on you. This is a big discussion, right? This is a deep topic. It's sensitive to a lot of people. We want to really want to dive into it. So Michael, go ahead and tell us a little bit about you and yours.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and keep it general here to start with, and then we get into some more of the details as we go through some of the other topics through here. But as far as my experience with image competitions, first started, like I mentioned, it was about 6 years ago that I got a camera, wanted to learn how to use it, joined the Lone Tree Photography Club here locally. And I went to like 2 of their meetings, and then I attended one competition without entering, just to kind of get a feel for what was going on in that. And then, so then the next competition, I think, or the next competition they had was 2 months later. So at that point, I think I had a camera for all of about 5 months. And I was terrified. I submitted 2 images and went into the competition with, what are they going to think? I'm brand new to this. What's the experience going to be? And was pleasantly surprised that one of my 2 images did very well. The other one, as would be expected, didn't do so great. But to Peter's point and what Troy was saying, what I find is the benefit over the course of, now that I've been doing this for 6 years, whether it be the Lone Tree Photography Club, whether it be the competitions that we have with the Professional Photographers of America, Professional Photographers of Colorado, with the This Week in Photo with Frederick and Troy, and the critiques that they have. Every time I enter and even attend and watch the images that are either my images, and then also the images that other people are submitting, it's always a learning experience. There's always a great takeaways that I come away with. And then, some of them will be, as Peter pointed out, there are things that you can edit differently, change black and white or whatever. But then the other big benefit is, composition and recommendations on how to compose. And so as a I'll say, landscape photographer, every time I go out into the field, I'm bringing with me some of the knowledge from some of those competitions, the comments, the critiques, and so forth, and really thinking through some of those things while I'm out in the field. And then when I get home and edit, I'm again thinking through some of the things that I've learned from the critiques. So, it's been a wonderful experience for me. I always am looking forward to it. Yes, there are still times where I submit a few images and come back with scores that are a little bit less than I would have expected, but I never feel like it was a waste of time. It's always been worth doing. And again, to me, the benefit isn't so much in what awards I get or what scores, or did I win that month or whatever and so forth, but it's the takeaways from the critiques and the comments are to me the real bonus from those.
Right, and that can be a hard thing for a lot of people, because when you take your images, right, we'll say images because we're kind of distilling it, but really to each and every one of us, like, it's our art, it's our kids, like we're really connected to these images. And then to have somebody look at it and go, well, the horizon's a little tilted and that's a little bit out of focus, and I better come back at a better time of day, you get a 79, which basically means your image is average. And it can be really disheartening. So, to Michael's point and to Peter's point, I guess what we're really trying to say is that what a judge says doesn't mean whether your work is good or not. I have images that I entered at 2 local competitions. They didn't merit. I entered it at a state competition. It did not merit. I took the exact same images and I took it to national, and it went alone. So if you're a member of PPA, you understand that loan is like a very high honor. You get to go into the loan book, you get extra merits for that. And so sometimes you might love an image more than any of the judges do. And you just have to stick with your art and push your way through. You absolutely do have to build images for the judges, though. You absolutely do have to build images to fit the competition. I think no different than any other type of competition, right? Like, if you're going to race motorcycles, you're on dirt and there's certain rules. If you're going to race street, there's certain rules, right? In NASCAR, you can rub and bump, but in Formula One, that's not so acceptable. And so it isn't that it's right or wrong. It's that that's how the competition works, and go at it to learn and get those critiques. Margie just ran out to take pictures of the moon. It looks really cool. It's just not photographic because it's very dark. So one of the questions that I have is do the judges' comments really matter? And Peter, I'll let you kind of answer that question and how you address that, how you work with that.
Yeah, that's a really difficult question, because if a judge says bad things, you automatically think he's a bastard and you hate him instantly. But if the judge is one of the best landscape or best portrait photographers in the country, or has credentials that are very long and is talented, then you have to pay attention to that. But it's difficult at the time you get upset, but write down or look at it later and take whatever the judge says and apply it to your image and see if it works. If it doesn't work and he wants you to do black and white and you hate black and white, then that's fine. You disregard what the judge says. Take into account what
are you picking on me specifically about black and white?
What?
Are you picking on me specifically about black and white? Okay.
It's all the infrared photographers and black and white people. They should stop doing it and move on to color right now. We don't want them doing that anymore. No, I mean, look, the thing is, everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a taste, different taste on everything. So just take what they say and analyze it and have a look at it. And they don't know, and they're making criticisms of your photo, or they don't know who you are. Okay, they may later on, but they don't know who you are. They're making a judgment call. You can take it or not take it. But in my experience, most of the time, 90% of the judges, even though you may not agree with them, they are making a comment that is valid. You know, too much dust, too much reflection, too much this, too much that, halos, on and on, you know, artifacts. You did this wrong, that wrong. Pay attention to it, because it will eventually make you a much better photographer. And it's led me to actually be in the Festival of the Arts in Laguna, selling my artwork and making a lot of money. And I probably could not, and I actually know definitely I could not be able to do that if I hadn't had image competition, you know, under my belt to make the images and artwork look spectacular. And that's the goal.
Yeah, the hope is and so my personal experience was, many of you know Jim Doyle. He's an amazing architectural photographer and very technically proficient. And I submitted an image of a couple sitting on a motorcycle, and he really tore me up because he said there was no detail in the chrome. And I said, well, it's chrome, it's a reflection. He goes, bull. He goes, there better be detail in there. And it took me about a year and a half of improving my work. And I was like, you know, he's not entirely wrong. It was pure white. I should have done better. And so I next time I photographed something that had that reflection in there, I worked harder at it and thought, okay, Jim's gonna be mad at me if I don't work harder at this. Stephen, you have your hand up. What is your question?
Sorry, take a sec to unmute there. So yeah, so I'll just kind of relate a story to you guys, because I agree with, you know, virtually everything you guys have shared so far, and also Michael's comments. But what do you do when a judge is incompetent to judge your work? And what I mean by this is, as you guys know, I do a lot of motorsports photojournalism, credentialed motorsports photojournalism, and I submitted actually a photograph of Ricardo Zonta breaking the overall lap record at Laguna Seca. And he was going so fast, he was lifting the inside front tire completely off the ground, exiting a corner. And the judge looked at it and said, is he moving? Right? So clearly that judge did not know what she was looking at. And of course, it didn't score well because she simply had no domain expertise with respect to photojournalism. So, you know, I guess, number one, what are you guys' thoughts about that? And, you know, when the judge has no domain expertise with respect to the discipline that you're competing in, and then, you know, kind of where do you go from there? So,
Michael, do you have any thoughts? Any reply to that?
Yeah, I think I can. And you know, to the point of you know, the judges, you know, do the judges' comments matter? And yes, it is very subjective. And as Peter pointed out, you can have a variety. To Stephen's, to answer your question, again, it kind of comes back to that, you know, some of it is subjective, but then I have experienced that also. And even at the PPA level, even though when we get those who are trained at, again, there are 12, elements of excellence and so forth and that they measure on. You still occasionally will have, PPA seems to be a little bit more heavily weighted towards, I'll say, portrait and people photography than it is landscape and nature and wildlife.
Yeah.
So I've run into that also in that too, where you'll have, usually we'll have say 3 judges or whatever on some of these panels, and the scores will vary quite a bit. I had one time that one judge gave a 94 and a couple others gave 82. So they went back and forth and fortunately talked it up to a 91 versus the other direction. But to your point, if I was only limited, if that image was only being judged by one of those 3, and it happened to be one of those ones that gave it like an 81 or an 82, that would have been my score, and it would have, not really, it would have merited, but just barely, right? And I guess the point that you're bringing up is, sometimes there may be competent judges, but maybe not competent in the genre that you're photographing. And with you, there's a certain skill set that goes along with photographing, motor vehicles that are moving at that kind of speed, in the same way that photographing, eagles flying through the sky or, wildlife in motion, it's different than the judge who may be really accomplished at, what's the right lighting for somebody in a studio portrait. And so you're right. I mean, there are times, and so do the judge's comments matter? Maybe there are some of those times where you sort of have to take, what they say, you may not agree with them, and they may not be competent in that genre. And, you don't learn a whole lot from that particular judge, but hopefully somewhere along the line, you come across the right judges that give you the right feedback and learn from those.
Well, the bottom line is this, that there's no judge out there that has seen everything. Okay. And all of these judges are either portrait, wedding, landscape, studio, architectural, whatever. They do know photography, they see it, but are they experts? No. So in Stephen's case, they don't know that this bike's going fast. They got no idea that it means a big thing. But the point is that you just go, okay, well, that's how it went. That's not the end of the day. You can always then resubmit somewhere else. And I've seen in PPA where a judge, and they're looking at the northern lights, and she was saying, well, I don't like the color of these green things in the sky and all the rest of it. That's because she didn't know what she was looking at. But that happens all the time. It's human nature. You can't be an expert in everything, and we know that. But, the better judges will have a broad brush that they look at stuff and they can tell that, the wheel's up. So obviously it's going fast and all the rest of it. Don't take it personally that someone's criticizing your photo and they just shoot babies. And if they just shoot babies and newborns and you put a motorcycle in there, they're going to go, well, what the hell is that? Some guy with a funny helmet and a suit and he's got a funny wheel. They're not going to be able to judge that correctly. But, that's how it goes. And you just move on. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't take it seriously. But also try to enter the right images for the right competition. And I think that's really important too, is that, if you're going to submit images to PPA, look at the body of work that PPA normally has.
Yeah.
And unless you happen to get a really, really proficient, motorsports judge, it's not going to go well. And you just can't take that serious. You kind of got to go like, well, I've entered abstract fireworks. Some of you guys have seen that stuff at PPA, and it's like, they don't get it.
No.
Okay.
They don't know that you set your garage on fire, you set your car on fire, and the dog next door. Okay, well,
they don't care.
He lived.
They don't care.
He lived.
I'll bring up an example real quick, and then we'll go. I know there's a couple questions that are out there, but one is kind of funny. We had in one of our Lone Tree Club meetings, we had a judge, and right at I had already submitted my images, right, a few images, and right at the very beginning, the judge says, I really don't care that much for trees, and I don't really care that much for infrared. And guess what I had submitted for that competition?
Infrared tree.
So naturally, I did not score very well on that one. But it was the same image that over in, I'll say the Professional Photographers of Colorado, which had PPA judges. Fortunately, one of them recognized the infrared and spoke highly of it, and that was the one that pulled up to a 91. So
yeah.
Well, when you're on the cutting edge with infrared, I mean, you're going to get abused. So I think you should give that up, Michael, and try just regular photography.
And I think this is an important point, guys, is that, you know, we can poke fun at this and stuff like that, but in reality, you're going to enter images. Look, I've judged at state, lots of local stuff. I've worked print comps at WPPI national competitions. I've been a judge many places, and I can tell you with all honesty, judges are idiots. They just when they're judging, they get their mind set on a certain, you know, goal, and they have this thing in their head, and by the way, it's hard. It's really hard to be a judge. If
Very
you guys
hard.
if you
Very
guys
hard.
have never judged, you think that that person made a comment about my image and it was stupid. Sometimes they are, because 1 out of 3 judges has to talk each time, make a comment. They have to come up with a score, and they have to give their comment in a way that is hopefully constructive in literally 60 seconds.
Yeah.
So
and I've been to a
easy.
competition with Troy, and he was a judge, and we had somebody that was disgruntled follow us out to the car and make disparaging remarks. And I ended up being Troy's bodyguard for $25. But, you know, it happens. And believe me, judging and giving a point score to something is very difficult, because you have to act responsible and call it the way it is. And it's not easy, not always easy.
So let's move on to Frederick has a question, and then we'll do Rob, and then we'll jump over to a different topic here a little bit. Frederick.
Yeah, I just had a quick, I don't know if it's a question, it's more of yeah, I'm curious and I'd love feedback. So we do our critiques every week, right? And to Stephen's point of unqualified judging, right? So the way that I approach them, I don't know if this is the correct way, but the way that I approach the critiques are from I look at the photography as a lay person on the street, right? So like to Stephen's point about motorsports, if you are entering a photo into a motorsports competition and the judges were ex-motorsports photographers and judging them on the merits of motion blur and, you know, peak action and all that stuff, and that's one thing. But if it's going to go in a gallery in a souvenir shop in Maui, right, and it needs to stand on its own 2 feet based on this random selection of humans they're going to be watching it, that's what I look at. So I'm looking at it from that sort of generic standpoint, and not from a subject matter expertise standpoint. I don't know if that's the right way to be looking at it. So I'm just putting that out there. Is it like, are we doing it a disservice by looking at it from more of a novice perspective, or are we helping because most of the world is novices looking at, you know, these photos? Yeah. So I don't know. That's just where
let me sort of speak to that. So every image, regardless of the topic, has basic photographic principles and elements. We have good lighting, we have focus, we have, you know, composition, we, you know, have leading lines, we have color harmony, we have all these things. Aside from topic, a good judge should be able to speak to all those things and realize that they're not an expert in that topic. So again, this kind of goes back to this idea that one, overall photography as a general rule, a good judge should be able to give you a decent comment on that image, whether they understand exactly what it is or not. But then when you get into the specificity of, like Stephen brought up, where, oh, this is so-and-so, and he's in this corner at this track, and he's doing this thing. Well, you know what? A lot of that stuff doesn't translate in a photograph to everybody. So that's hard. And that really comes down to the competition and the judge, and just take what the judge says. Because imagine that you have this really amazing shot of somebody coming into a corner or whatever, but the lighting, there's a shadow that you didn't see, maybe coming across in a weird spot, and that judge doesn't know it, but he brings up the shadow. Well, hopefully next time you'll think, I can adjust where the shadow is, or I'll move, I'll sit on a different corner, or don't enter the image, because if the judges don't like it, just don't enter the image. So.
Yeah, I'll just add super quick that races are shot at a very bad time of day for lighting. That's all.
Yeah, always middle of the day.
Yeah. So are weddings, by the way. So are weddings.
To Frederick's comment, just quickly jumping in, Frederick, you're positioning yourself as Mr. Average. Okay, which you're not, because, you know, you're a talented guy running, you know, big program, TWIP and all the rest of it. And you've seen a lot of photographs in your life, but I do know that you and Troy try to be very fair and balanced. And I think that's, as a photographer, that's all you hope for, is that when somebody looks at it, they are looking at it as from a fair and balanced point of view. Okay. Troy may put up, you know, these things about the, you know, the borderline, the key line, the black and white thing, and, you know, a whole bunch of other crap that he always throws in. But Troy will assess the photo or image balanced, and both you guys work extremely well and make a lot of fair comments. A lot of stuff that you make comments about my stuff, I go, I didn't even see that. I didn't even notice that. And off you go. But that's what makes it fun.
And we'll keep the payments coming to you for your kind words.
Yeah, keep the $2 in the mail, all right?
Rob, what is your question, my friend?
So, Troy, you said something at the top about, you know, not only is you're submitting images, you've got you know, the topic that you're working towards, but you also said something about, you know, tailoring images to the judges. What did you mean by that?
So every competition has a sort of different, I don't want to say a set of rules, but it has a different baseline for that competition, right? And PPA, it is a bubble, and in PPA there are certain styles and certain techniques that are held with high regard, and there's other techniques that are held with low regard. And once you start to enter those certain competitions, you tailor your images to fit that particular competition. So if you were to enter a competition for TWIP and you were going to show something to Troy and Frederick, and you've seen them judge before, or you just kind of heard about TWIP, or you watched it, you know, like, well, they really dig simple, you know, black and white. Like, I can make an image they're going to love. And if you enter PPA, you better get your posing right, your lighting right, you know, all those type of elements right. So that's kind of what I meant by that, was understanding the competition you're going into. I'll take that even a step further. If you're going to create images, and we'll use Stephen's example, where you're going to enter motorsports and you're going to enter a strictly motorsports competition, you better be exquisitely perfect on some of your motorsport stuff, right? Like the names of the riders' helmets, being able to see their face. So that's kind of what I meant, was like, you're building an image for that competition. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add to that, and it's a great question, Rob. Is that, and this also kind of answers, you know, Frederick's question too. Is that, you know, there are a lot of times where, and I'll speak on behalf of our like Lone Tree Photography Club, and we get certain judges that we get repeats. You know, I'll say every year, or every other year, or whatever. And you remember those ones that liked a little bit more vignetting on the corner. So you like the one, you know, you remember the ones that were looking for certain things or whatever in that. Now, to the first person who goes to that competition and didn't have that judge before, they will hear those comments throughout the, you know, throughout that particular competition, and they'll learn that for the one going forward. So it's tough to say that there's much consistency from one judge to the next. And then, as Troy was pointing out with the PPA, and ahead of this meeting tonight, I went ahead and printed out their 12 elements of a merit image, but they have like 12 things that the judges are, you know, supposed to be looking for all the way through. Some of those 12 are more important than the others. I'll say impact, subject matter, storytelling, probably go a little bit more, you know, or a little bit stronger than some of the other items or whatever in that. But they all have some weight to them, and it you know, it is going to be different from one competition to the next. And there is a difference between what we will, you know, see the judges comment on in the PPA sponsored events with PPA judges versus some of the judges that we have for, say, our Lone Tree Photography Club, or for some of the other ones that we go to.
Right.
I don't know.
And I'd just like to add to what Michael said, because I think that's very, very fair, is that I don't want to get into a situation where I want to submit pictures because that's what I think the judges are looking for. I try my very, very best all the time to submit pictures that I actually love myself, that I would hang on the wall myself, that if somebody else likes it, then I go, wow, that's cool. You like that picture? Well, that's great, because that's what I like. But if you're a photographer that's in business and you need to get the accolades and stick them on your wall and all the rest of it, okay, then it's a different story, because then you're doing it to make people feel comfortable that you're an accomplished and a talented photographer. If you're doing it to improve your skills and do your own image and follow, you know, the way you want to photograph, then I say encourage you to do that. And if you only get 75s and 80s and that's it, don't worry about it, because at the end of the day, you're producing the things that you love, because everybody's taste is different.
Right. But don't get upset if the judges don't like your work as much
absolutely.
as somebody
Don't
else.
get upset. Don't get upset.
Right.
Because you can't
Who's
make
building
everybody
it.
happy. You can't make everybody
Right.
happy.
And just to go ahead, Michael.
Oh, I was going to say, and there are plenty of times where, you know, you hear that and you're like, you know, maybe you didn't get the score you wanted, and you think, oh, that judge doesn't really know what she's talking about. And then all of a sudden, like afterwards, you go back and you really inspect your image and remember back to what she said during the critique, and it's like, nope, she was right. You know, that was many times. Yeah, and again, you put your ego aside and go back and you learn from that and go forward.
Yeah, it took me 9.5 years to get over that, Michael, not to listen to and curse them out and abuse them. But you're right. You're right. Take what you need to make your images and artwork better, but follow your destiny basically, and just produce the stuff that you love.
Right. And to speak to Rod's question a little bit more, not all competitions will tell you who the judges are. But if you know who the judges are, look them up. You can tell their style right away. And if you see a judge that's website is full of abstract-y things, and you have some great abstracts, that judge may fight for you.
Yeah.
They may get outvoted.
Yeah.
But that's so you know, to sort of like level what Peter said, I entered every competition. I could enter 4 images for state, for local. I would enter 3 images in the wedding category that I thought would do well, because I wanted the scores and I wanted to win the wedding category. And then I would enter 1 image that was strictly for me. It was 100% my art. Oftentimes that one did the worst, but that was okay. That was for me.
But you've had fun making it. You had fun making it.
I
Your water drops,
did. And
your explosions, you know, killing little animals. Well, not killing little animals, just.
And no, thanks for that. And I learned from some of the critiques, because I realized that people were not understanding what I was showing. I had a vision of it, but they didn't get it. So there was this disconnect. We have 2 questions. Stephen, do you have a question? And then we have April.
I don't have a question, but I'd like to add a comment to this discussion, which I think folks will find helpful. So the reason that I enter competition and why I find it valuable, and I'm putting this in the context of someone who taught very complex things to very smart people for a very long time, and if I generalize that concept up, where it helps me is to provide a context of understanding that drives insight about actions that I want to take to make my photography better. Okay, and I see Peter nodding. Peter gets this, right?
Yeah.
So what I will say is that I personally found our weekly critiques that Frederick and Troy do, number one of the most significant things I've done in my entire life as a photographer to improve my photography. And I also find that Frederick and Troy, because they have a broader, I think, awareness of things, I find their personally critiques more useful to me personally than the more constrained box within which PPA competition fits,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's for me is the challenge, because you know I'm getting a thing to like renew my IEPPV, and I'm thinking, do I want to do this? It's a lot of money. It's $250. I'm a retired guy. Blah 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 blah. You know. How much do I get out of it, right? And the biggest issue I have with the PPA style competition is I find that it's not as expansive in its conceptualization of imagery that Frederick and Troy provide, right? And that's where I struggle with that. I'll just leave that for you guys to think
Well,
about?
they've got too many images that they're looking at. But the point that you're making is that you don't necessarily have to agree with the comments. You just have to review them. And if you later down the road go, yeah, you know what, I'll try that. Nah, it doesn't look good. Or, wow, I tried that and that's good. Then that's what you do. It just makes you a better photographer and a better person. Yeah.
Sorry, I was muted, so I didn't make noise. April, what is your question?
Hi. So I have been contemplating entering image competition since I first learned about it in 2018, but I've always been like kind of frozen in fear of even like where to begin. So I could think my question is for somebody who's looking to start entering into these competitions, where do you recommend just enter what you have? I mean, because like I've when I first learned about these competitions and all the rules, it was the first time I'd ever heard of any of this. And I thought it was amazing. And I sat and I listened to all the judges critique their other people's work. And I like had this bigger picture of what this meant for me, for my photography. So of course, like I'm all about the growth. And that's why I want to enter these competitions, not for my work or for like my clients, but just for myself. So what are your recommendations for a newbie who wants to do this?
So do you have are you talking like a PPA local affiliate or a PPA?
So yeah, I first learned about it through my local affiliate. And then I ended up moving out here to California, and then the pandemic happened. And so a lot of things had stalled that for me. I do have two small children that I was full-time taking care of during this pandemic.
Yeah.
And they've just recently entered school, and I recently decided like I want to get back on track and kind of continue to grow. But obviously for me, like every time I look back at my old work, which I happen to do today as I'm updating my website, I realized like, wow, that lighting was really harsh, and my style has changed. I've grown, just by changing simple things. And that's what I want to continue doing. So that's kind of where I'm at with entering a local competition before I even move to a PPA competition.
It's like learning to drive. When you're young and you go, oh my God, this is so scary. Could be dangerous, blah, and it's nerve-wracking. And now you get in the car and you can drive, with no problem. Entering competition, you just got to do it. Join IEPPV. Yep. Reach out. There's a lot of people that will help you get geared up, ready to go, and learn how to do it. Put stuff in, put a variety of things in, see how it goes, listen to the feedback, and then just tweak your work. Once you do it and you get going, you'll go, oh, I should have done this a while ago, because it is rewarding, because you will get great feedback and great comment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, I was gonna say, I can speak to that also, just because I was almost in the identical spot there. Like I said, I had only been photographing for about 4 or 5 months when I first, and this was a local, club here, the Lone Tree Photography Club here in Colorado. And I did the same thing. I was terrified to enter that first one. And like I said, one image did pretty well. The other one I submitted didn't do so great. But again, it was a great learning experience. As terrified as I was to, when the first one popped up, let me hear what they had to say about it. Take it, again, you kind of put that fear aside, put your ego aside, take those comments, listen, also be sure to listen to the comments that are on all of the other submissions, that the photos that others are submitting, because you'll learn a lot from those ones also, in addition to the one that you submit. I mentioned a name earlier to Peter, Shannon Squires, part of our Professional Photographer of Colorado group out here. 4 or 5 years ago, I just heard that she was terrified. She didn't want to enter a competition because she didn't think she was good enough. These last 2 years, she's just killed it at the PPA national level with national Geo awards and so forth and that. So again, I understand you have to start somewhere, but it really, you'll be happy you did whenever you do that and then continue to move forward.
And April, nothing is more exciting than when you get your first merit and you go, oh, that's good. And then you go, well, I could do this again. And then you get a couple more and a couple more. And then you get into the 81s, 82, 83s. And then you get into the 85s and you go, well, you know what? 90 doesn't look too bad. And then you work harder to get 90s. And then you go, well, geez, 95 doesn't look that bad. And then you're in the mystery loop of aiming for 100. And
yeah, and then you're upset that you're not getting 90s, high 80s or 90s on a regular basis.
Yeah.
The reason that I asked what affiliate, because like if you were to enter like at a local fair competition, the rules and the judging are different. If you're going to enter at a local affiliate competition, those expectations are different. If you're going to go on to PPA or WPPI, every one of those has different expectations. And what I would say is, one, just enter, just jump in, just do it. But also research the images that other people are entering and that are winning, especially ones that sort of fit your style. So not knowing what type of portrait or what type of photography you do, let's just say that, you do, fine art, portraits and families, right? Well, look at what's winning in that category. It may not be your exact style, but try to build some images that you think would do well in that category and then enter some of your own. Part of the learning is this idea that I'm going to try to make an image that they like. That's going to force you to maybe learn some Photoshop skills you didn't have before, or it's going to challenge you to get better at your posing, things like that. Or, a judge may comment like, well, why is the feet cut off in this image? And you go back and look at all your images and be like, oh my God, I cut the feet off in a lot of my images, right? Like, I never thought of that. Does it matter to your client? You get green merits from your clients. Doesn't matter to your clients, but it might stick in your head. So,
and look, don't be scared of it. Jump in, do it, stick with it. I can guarantee that if we talk to you again in 2 years from now and you've been in competitions, you will be a much better photographer in 2 years than you are today. No question.
And you will like Peter less because of the journey.
Yeah, you might hate me after all of it because you will be obsessed to do it more.
So did that help you?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of like little questions about like frames and stuff like that, the borders that you guys use on them. I've sat through several image competitions, especially during the pandemic, because it was the only thing I could do when my kids went to bed was put myself on mute and just listen to people critique other images. And so I think what I'm just going to have to do is like whatever question I have before I enter, just reach out to somebody, because I'm a PPOC member in California. So that's how I'm able to attend this Zoom tonight.
So what you can do is you probably know who Dwayne Murphy is. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's a good friend of Peter's. Dwayne actually has a studio right across the street from Peter in Santa Ana. So we all know each other and we're all really close. You can absolutely reach out to Dwayne or me directly or anybody. And if I'll sit down with you on Zoom. Anybody, by the way, anybody here, I'll show you how to create a key line, how to put a border on it, how to simplify it, because there are things, and as passionate as I am about image competition, there are things that I absolutely detest about it. And there are things that I think that are curmudgeony and old school and biased and need to go away. However, so is the rest of the world. And we just kind of have to learn to navigate, right? So I'm happy to help you. I know Dwayne is happy to help you. Peter doesn't know how to do most of the stuff on the computer.
No, but I'll try and help you. I'll try and help you.
I was going to say, and when Troy says that he's offering to help, he's not just saying that. Just from my experience in that, he's very generous with his time and will help you with some of those very things that he's describing.
And April, come join us at Twit Pro, because we have weekly.
Never even heard of that. What is that?
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes for you for it. But Frederick can do that. But it's a great group of folks. We have weekly critiques on all sorts of stuff. It's different than PPA. It's single-handedly been the most important thing.
It's a group of old photographers, white men.
It's a community. Yeah, it's a community. and Frederick is the owner, founder, the headmaster of the TWIP Pro community. And that's kind of how I think, I'm looking at all the faces. I think all of us are in the TWIP community right now that are on screen. Many of them are sitting in the sidelines. It's a group where we can chat and we can share directly within a private community. So that's really important. I will.
I was going to say, it's not just the chat of us, it's also the guests that he brings in from outside, and like the one who did the other night on architecture. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, Troy.
No, it's fine. No, you're right. Like I've got a lot of things going through my head, and I'm sitting in the back of my truck. So, so when it comes to presentation, I'll just say this really quick, and then just to kind of give you a little heads up, Michael, let's go to one of your questions that you had formulated, right? One of your thoughts. So we'll go to one of those. But when it comes to presentation, let's just do it this way, right? I know PPOC and IEPPV have the same rules. It's 4,000 pixels longest side, 200 DPI, saved at a quality of roughly 8 to 10. We want to keep the image size between 3 to 5 megs, somewhere in there, okay? Black border, 20% white key line around the image with about a I don't know, I'm going to say like a 1/4 of an inch of the black border. So image, tiny key line, maybe 3 to 5 pixels, and then call it I don't know how many pixels it would be, call it a 1/4 of an inch for black. Super simple, super clean. Don't get fancy. Start with that. I can show you crazy presentations later by a good friend of ours called Karen Nakamura. Her name is Karen Nakamura. Which actually you can look up her images on packartists.com. She's one of our artists there. She does a lot of flowers and floral, and some of her images actually come outside of the matting and the key line, and she's very good at creating that. Yeah. Very difficult. I mean, it's a lot of work, but just to kind of get you started, because I know one of the hard things about competition is, where do I start? Right?
Yeah.
Pick your images, simple presentation. If you can't do the presentation, don't worry about that. Just go edge to edge, just get the images in there, and then do what you're doing now. You're already ahead of everybody else because you're asking questions.
So, I have one more question. So I'm constantly like trying to figure out Photoshop all the time.
So will we all?
But so I've been looking into like West Coast School of Photography's, I think they have a Photoshop class coming up. But what is like the best resource? I'm a maternity and newborn photographer, by the way. So like for me, everything I do revolves around baby skin and that kind of thing. So I have my own set of way of doing things. But there's so many other elements that I see in these images in print competition that they draw my attention to them. And I know it's a Photoshop thing. So what is the best place for me to go to like further my Photoshop skills?
West Coast School is a good place to go. That's run by PPC. I don't know who the instructors are this year, but it's a week-long intensive experience, right? And so if you've got somebody there, the names are eluding me right now, but whoever's going to be teaching Photoshop there would be a really good place to go. But also get into a community and ask questions where you can show images and you can say, hey, how was this done? And you may be surprised that it's less Photoshop than you think. And that really comes down to, for you, when you're building images for competition specifically, you have to decide what is images that are going to go into, it's Phil Collins. Thank you, Rebecca. Phil Collins, gosh, Michael Collins.
He's the singer. Phil Collins is the singer.
It's not Phil Collins. Michael Collins is going to be teaching Photoshop this year at West Coast School, and he is a fantastic human being. He's a fun guy, and he knows his Photoshop very, very well. Very so intense. If you decide to go to that would be great. But also, reach out to people that are doing work that you like, and have them look at your images and have them critique it for you and have them help you get it ready. You may find that a lot of the stuff that happens in Photoshop can be done in camera before you get to Photoshop. And that's always my suggestion, right? If the lighting is harsh, fix it, in your lighting and stuff. Look at the styles that other people are entering. Try to get images that are going to score like that, and then do some for you, whether it requires Photoshop work or not.
So April,
that's
April, there's also some great video content that you can license, either watch online or purchase, I think, to download Pro EDU. Frederick knows the guys at Pro EDU. Those guys have got incredible content. You can literally learn professional photography business stuff from the quality of the content. And there's some incredible guys that are doing amazing retouching stuff and things like that. So check out Pro EDU as well, because there's content there that world-class folks doing some of the things that you're asking about.
Yeah. And April, if you look in the chat, I'm just looking at the chat right now. Rebecca posted, follow Julian Cost. Great recommendation. Julian is amazing. And Frederick put a little comment in there too. So there's tons of resources there for you.
So I've checked out Sue Bryce. I know that she has like a what is it called? A mastermind or master class, or she has like a specific site. And I've been there, and I just wondered if that was worth the investment. So it looks like, I'm guessing yes.
Yeah.
So let me.
I was going to say, her community over there, I've had the opportunity to go to one of their live events in Arizona, in the before times. And it was just a Tony Robbins level of excitement of people that all like the same stuff. And, they all like retouching and want to learn about posing and skin and lighting. And should I use medium format or mirrorless? And it was just us, but a lot of us in one spot. And then they've translated that over to the online as much as they could. I think she's got a really interesting sort of backstory, of how she got to where she is. I think that sort of weaves its way into her education and how she approaches education. So I think it's at least worth a look.
Yeah, I've seen her speak live at conferences before.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just one last thought before we move on. When it comes to Photoshop, my recommendation is don't try to learn Photoshop. Try to learn what you think you need to learn as you need it, right? So if you start looking at skin retouching, go learn skin retouching. Don't go take these massive classes on Photoshop, because there's so much information that won't apply to you for probably a long time or ever. I mean, it's Photoshop is one of those kind of things a lot of newer photographers really think like, oh, I gotta learn this thing. You can't learn it. It's vast, right? So get specific on what you need. It's like, okay, I need to perfect skin retouching. I need to perfect dodging and burning. Try to focus in those areas. So
thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Keep asking questions as we move forward. We're gonna so Michael Rhino, being being the guy who's really diving deep into image competition. I thought, hey, let's see what some of the challenges that he has and some of the things that he's observed through the organizations that he's part of. So Michael, what were some of the things that you were thinking of that we should touch on?
Yeah, so a couple of things that I jotted down here is, and these are things that come up as maybe being, I'll say, questions or sort of controversial, if you want to use that word, at some of our, I'll say, local competitions. And these are things that are allowed through PPA. But one of them is just in terms of like how much digital editing should be allowed. Should there be some restrictions on certain types of things in that? Right. And more specifically on that, I'll bring up a couple of examples, and that is that like with PPA and even with our Lone Tree Club, we do allow, say, sky replacements. And I know that's kind of been a hot topic in that, because, if you go out and, for myself, I try to do everything in camera, and I try and enjoy the experience when I go out and photograph landscapes and so forth. And if the sky, if it's just a blue sky and nothing's going on, it's like, well, I'll just try and come out another day when it's more interesting. But I'm at a disadvantage there as compared to those who are getting really good at And there was a day where it took a real talent in Photoshop and that to do a, say, like a sky replacement and do it right and make it look realistic. Today, that's not necessarily the case. It's pretty easy to go in. You still have to get the right direction of light and so forth to make it look realistic, but it really isn't that difficult. And for those of us, or for those who are trying to submit images, more on what the experience was, is it okay to have that as to be competing against those that are going out and just one image after another doing sky replacements? I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying that's sort of a controversial point there when it comes to
Michael, look, nothing's fair in life. You know that, okay?
So
bottom line is this: you can use as much digital, anything that you want, so long as the judge or somebody that looks at it cannot tell that you used a ton of digital. If your work
and that it's in the rules, as long as the rules,
it's in the rules. It's in the rules. You follow the rules.
Yep.
But if it's that good, okay, and the judge is looking at it and they don't know if you shot that with those clouds in or out, or the leopard was jumping through the sky or whatever, then it's fine. It's fine. You just got to make sure that when they look at it and they go, well, I can see all the clone tracks around the top and I can see this, this, and that, then you're in trouble, because you need to, if you're going to do it, make sure you do it and make it look really good.
Right.
Michael, that's a good reason to shoot photojournalism, because you can't do any of that stuff.
No.
Sure. And like I said, I wasn't necessarily critical of it. I'm just saying, these are some of the things that come up in the competitions, is that should sky replacements be allowed? Another example there would be the
well,
go ahead.
Let me answer that first. So there's always going to be sort of the backroom disgruntled conversation about, we shouldn't be allowed to do this and we shouldn't be allowed to do that. Like, look, unless it's your competition and you're writing the rules, if you don't like, read the rules. If you don't like it, don't enter that competition. I personally do not enter PPA anymore, because as a wedding photographer who creates all my work on the wedding day, I don't like to compete against other photographers that are doing a ton of Photoshop work or hanging out of helicopters over the Great Wall of China. I can't compete with that. So I choose not to compete there anymore.
Yeah.
And that's totally fair. The local affiliates, and I know Orange County is very much like this, so is IEPPV, is that we have rules when it comes to like IEPPV, for example. On a wedding category, it has to be an actual client and it has to be on a wedding day. Now, I don't think the rules disallow small pixel pushing, like some sky swaps and things like that, as long as it doesn't change the essence of the image. I don't remember exactly. But if the rules allow it, you go with it. Because here's the thing, the rules allow it for everybody. So if you want to compete there, jump in and compete there, right?
And Michael, look, PPA is a Photoshop competition. That's what it is. It's how good are your skills at putting things together that impress the judges.
And it's part of creating that impact, right? I mean, those are some of the elements.
If you put a picture of Horseshoe Bend in, they've seen 1,000, you better have some, nice, dinosaur walking across the top and something different that they haven't seen before. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a Photoshop competition, and then that's how it is. And you know that when you enter. So they don't have a photojournalism. WPPI does, and
so,
other affiliates do. So that is where,
This is actually added reportage for photojournalism last year, so there will be a separate category for photojournalism in
PPA.
Yes.
Oh, this year?
Last year, 2000.
They do have that. Yeah, they do have.
That's
because I missed that completely.
Yeah, and they also changed the rule. Originally, they won't accept any using elements by any other third party. Now they have changed the rule in 2022 that as long as the supporting element is not a major part of the image, it can be used.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
That's good to know.
So here's the big takeaway, right? Like what we've already seen. Every competition's rules are going to be different. And I promise you that we will not all be happy with all the rules of any competition. But it is a competition. So read the rules and win. Frederick, you had a question.
Yeah, just real quick, just from a position of not understanding how these formal composition or competitions work exactly. What you guys may remember, what was it, last month? I think it was. I did an interview with a person from Adobe, the one in charge of the creative insights. You know, they do these basically these roundups of what the creative zeitgeist of the world is for the past year. You know, and this past year was very down because of everything going on, and you could see that reflected in the creative, right? So I'm wondering, does the zeitgeist of the world, or the tone, the creative tone of the world, factor into these competitions, or are these judges looking for more, you know, kind of evergreen kind of content? I'm curious.
Peter, what do you think?
Jesus, that is such a hard question.
It's what I do, Peter. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's why you get paid the big bucks. Wow. You know what? I would say yes, in as much that, you know, everyone's locked up, pandemic, people are dying, we're all doing Zoom meetings. So maybe the lighthearted and not, you know, pictures of people in, you know, getting shot at and this, that, and the other thing. People want to see something that's more lighthearted, fantasy stuff, more, you know, beautiful bride walking up a fake stairwell case, whatever. I think that's the case. When life is difficult and hard, people want to have some sort of escapism and don't want to, you know, react with the misery of reality. And I think, you know, that what, you know, all the judges are human, and that's how that works. And, you know, it's hard. It's really hard. But there's definitely been a push to have more of the add things to photos than have not add things to the photos, to make the image, you know, pop more, be more vibrant, be more something that they haven't seen before. And that's very difficult to do. That's very
like on the commercial side, I had that conversation with Jeffrey Totaro, architectural photographer, and he was saying, I think we recorded this. This may have been offline, but I was asking him about masks in photos, you know, from the standpoint of, if you don't have a mask in the photo, does that date the image? Right? So should you have a mask in there? And if you do have a mask in there, does that date the image? Because 10 years from now, nobody's going to want to see that. So
no.
Yeah.
It's a good question, actually, because I look at it more as a fit for purpose kind of thing. Because when I do a tour, I'm, for the most part, asking, how long do you want this to be up, and how long will it be before you want me to come back and reshoot it, right? So it's at that point, it's a fit for purpose. It's like, I look at it as actually a business opportunity, that if they do want the masks on,
obsolescence.
It's like, exactly, like, you know, and actually right now, it's actually very, very effective in the commercial space to show that kind of thing, because you're telling people, hey, look, we really do care about everyone else's wellness, and you're, you know, so, you know, they're demonstrating that. I actually got a lot of the time photos of people cleaning the equipment. That's almost as important as people using the equipment.
But in 23 and 24, you're going to go back to those clients and say, hey, you know, those mask things are out. The new thing is now, you better put that in.
Yeah, exactly.
So with respect to the competition thing, it's ever changing. So absolutely, Frederick, if you're going to do a portrait within this time frame, and you wanted to include masks for whatever kind of statement that you want to make, yes, it's going to have more impact, and yes, it's probably going to score higher because it reacts for people emotionally. Okay, but also it could be negatively because they're tired of seeing masks. Now I realize that those two answers are exactly it's a paradigm, right? Michael has a question here where he asks, for genres of photography that provide services, I'm probably finding it wrong. Anyway, I'll paraphrase. He's asking about photographing well-known landmarks. The same thing about originality also pertain to things that we're used to seeing. So I have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of images of Horseshoe Bend. And if I see another image of Horseshoe Bend that isn't absolutely exquisite, it's going to be really, really hard for me to want to give that a good image, a good score, because I know that you could have shown up at a better time of day. You could have waited for better weather. You could have waited for better light. And I know that. So be careful of the subject matter you enter as well, because a traditional, mundane, straightforward, perfectly lit portrait is not going to do as well as something that's a little bit more evocative, a little bit more emotional, or a little bit more unique. You've got to find that, balance.
Yeah.
And that's the human side of
even though that you're the first time that you went to Horseshoe Bend and you go, this is fantastic, the judge like you has seen 1,000 of those before you present yours.
Look, I have seen, and I kid you not, I have seen some of the most exquisitely lit portraits get a low score, and a feather laying on the beach in the sand get 90, 95, and you're like, what the heck? It was just something simple. It was something different. It was something that connected with the judges at that time, may not have connected with them before previous competitions, may never connect again. But emotionally, it connected.
And it's a valid point, because we saw in one of the competitions, one of the members out there, he took some drone shots of rice paddies, but they were extremely well done, got a high score because most of the judges don't see that. Okay.
Right.
A common thing, rice paddies, green, how hard could it be? But just nicely done. High score, very high score.
And so I'll lean into that a little bit more, because April popped up and I thought of baby portraits. If as a judge, I have seen, I can't tell you how many swaddled babies laying in a basket with flowers around
and peas and beans.
And in reality, that becomes an average portrait now. But if you can create that same image with the same vibe, but do it in a way that's unique, right? Like a different type of blanket, or a different style of lighting, or different props that really take me out of the normal cliche image, I'm going to give that image a better score because it piques my interest more. And that's sort of the psychology of trying to understand the judges. And you play that game forever. But in the wedding category, for me, I would never show a picture of a bride and groom kissing for competition, because that's too normal, right? I want to show a picture of a bride that's beautiful with the wind blowing and a crow up in the tree, and the groom's maybe like jumping in the air. I don't know, he's on fire or something, because they won't see that a lot. So sort of an expansion into that thought there. So Michael, do you have I know you got several more questions.
So
you jump into a different category.
You just touched on the one there about being different, and like we just said, keep in mind that whenever you're having some of these images going up to and I'm speaking kind of more on the landscape side of it, but it's not going to be very unique if you put something out there that's of tunnel view, delicate arch, mesa arch, some of those kind of places, right? You may have a spectacular day that you happen to be there and do that, but chances are there were probably 20 others around you that clicked the shutter at the same exact time you did, and now it's just a matter of how did you process it. And so the way I phrase the question is, should those iconic locations, again, they're iconic for a reason, right? They're beautiful places, that should they be held to a different standard than those who are going out and walking a trail and finding something a little bit more unique. And maybe we've already answered that one, because I think what you were describing is, as a judge, you've seen tunnel view, you've seen maroon bells, you've seen these other.
And Michael, it comes down to, if you're a judge and you've seen it that many times, then it's human nature. Your expectation is, well, I've seen it. If it's the first time as a judge that you've seen that image, you go, oh, wow, that's great. And you give it a high score. But you are absolutely correct. If you're going to take pictures of any of those iconic, whatever they are, around the world, it better be substantially better than anything else that anyone has produced and seen. Yeah.
Right. And I think that the way you phrased the question was, should they be held to a different standard? Should they be looked at differently? No, they shouldn't be. But will they? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's just how the human element of judging works. So just be aware of that. There's a lot of disappointment for early photographers that enter a competition. And maybe, April, this is some advice for you, is that, you know, you create these amazing images and you enter them and you don't understand, like, why didn't I get good merits? Because the judges had probably seen that style a whole bunch of times. And that's not fair to you, right? Like, they should be able to judge on a flat scale, but they don't. That's just not how that's just not going to happen.
I get it.
Low expectations, April. Have very low expectations, and you'll be fine. Seriously, for 1 year.
I need to be honest.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
I need to be honest. I fully expect my images to be ripped to shred, and I am looking forward to it because I want to know how to get better.
Yeah.
But
and then when
I did want to.
Go ahead.
I did want to say I didn't plan on entering an image of a baby in a basket or on a blanket, but you know, I understand that you have to tell a story. So that's my challenge, and that's what I love to try to do. So I'm up for that.
I was judging at another local affiliate. I won't mention which one. And this woman, she's a maternity, not a maternity, but she's a baby photographer, right? And she entered some beautiful images of babies in baskets. And I didn't merit any of them because I felt that they were standard. They were nice images. But she was pissed because she thought they were the best images she's ever taken. And I'm like, but they're good images. That's where they're at. They're good images. They're not competition worthy. Competition is where you're supposed to push yourself past normal. You know, put yourself in. You know, really, really work hard.
April's in. She's going to do it. We want to hear from you at the end of 22, and you give us a briefing on how much fun you had this year.
So I think this would be a good time to let's talk about some of the categories a little bit, because I think there's a little confusion on maybe what's good in some categories and what's not good in other categories. Okay, Mark's got to bail. Bye, Mark. Thanks for hanging out.
I got to bail too, guys.
All right, thanks, Frederick. Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here pretty soon, so we're coming to the end. I think one of the important parts is that, you know, when you start entering images, you're going to think about what category am I going to enter these images in. So let's go over the categories just a little bit. And I'm speaking specifically within the PPA affiliates and like what the sort of the PPA bubble. And if I miss a category, remind me. But for example, portrait category. Portrait could also be like seniors, like high school seniors. It could also be if there is a maternity or a baby category, any of those kind of categories. The expectation is that you have unlimited control of your subject, the clothing, the posing, and the lighting. And that's really critical that you're aware of that, because if you enter an image in the portrait category and you pose somebody like this, they're going to knock you off because I can see the inside of your hand. You better pose that hand like actually it should be, I can't do it. Like it should be perfect, right? They're going to pick on that hand. Or if your shoulder's like this and you look uncomfortable, like they expect you to fix everything. And the lighting better be perfect too. And depending on the rules, you can do some pixel pushing, you can do some editing. So you can clean up the face, you can clean up hair, portrait. There's a hair that comes across an eye. I'm gonna ding points for that, because you should fix that, not just in Photoshop. You should have caught it before you took the photo. Okay, those are really important things in that category. Wedding category, and depending on the rules, again, the wedding category is, the expectation is that you shot this on a wedding day. So the judges should be more accepting of the fact that it's pseudo photojournalism and you don't have full control. Like you don't have control over the lighting, always over the time of day you get to shoot, over the clothing. right? You know, if he wears like a Dumb and Dumber type tuxedo and it clashes with the rest of the scenery, nothing you can do about that. Commercial, they're going to be exceedingly picky about vertical lines, horizontal lines, converging lines, highlight detail, shadow detail, focus, like all the way through the image. And I mean, it better be perfect. Yeah. You know, color contamination, you know, they're going to look at everything because it's going to be specific. Some affiliates will actually require a tear sheet, or they would like to see a tear sheet of a commercial image. Some do not. Now, the nice thing is that depending on what you photographed, you can enter it into commercial. The judges are going to look at that category differently. Photojournalism. Depending on the rules, you can usually do dodging and burning, but that's it. You can't clone any pixels out, can't take any pixels in, and you can crop, yes. Pretty much darkroom, what you could do in a darkroom. If you don't know what a darkroom is, look that up because they used to be fun. But dodging and burning, cropping, those kind of things you can do there. Then you have usually an open category or an illustrative or illustrative category. Those are really for anything that doesn't fit in the other categories. Now, it's really interesting because in the open categories or the illustrative category, the judges are generally more accepting of an image that isn't perfect, right? So they're not going to be as picky because they don't know about the lighting. They don't know whether it fits in the commercial, right? They're gonna sort of see it like, okay, I'm going to take it on face value. I don't know what this thing is. They're going to give you a score based on that. I know I'm missing some categories. So there's portrait, wedding, photojournalism, commercial.
Nature and landscape.
Yes. Okay. So nature and landscape. So nature, and I think this is how PPOC and IEPPV's rules are, is that, you know, nature is pretty much anything, very small amounts of a man-made item in it, and no zoos, no captive animals, and no potted plants, you know, things like that. So flowers that you pick out of a garden and you put in a pot and you photograph them in a perfect lighting environment, that's not considered nature.
And
then
in the
landscape.
in the PPA, they do allow even the captive animals in that. So
right.
And I had brought that up earlier in that, and not critical of it, but if I go out and photograph a bobcat in snow earlier this afternoon, I'm competing against somebody who might have been at a ranch where they brought in a tiger and it's walking through a natural scene in the snow or something like that. But
right, and I do agree with you. And again, this is where we're going to find challenges within the rules, but I do not like that rule with PPA. I think that's wrong. I think that nature should not be a captive animal because it's too easy to photograph a captive animal.
Yeah.
You know, but again, you know, not really debating the rules. It's more about, if you're going to enter there, know the rules so that you're not going to be disappointed. And then landscape is very much landscape. Usually there's some caveats to not necessarily. I'm trying to think about what our rules are for landscape. Usually detail. Yeah.
Cityscape is okay. I think cityscape can go there.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
The one thing that I think is really important to take away from this is that the judges are going to look at your images based on the category that you put them in. So if you show me a portrait and you put it in illustrative, and maybe you did super shallow depth of field and you did some funky things, I'm going to be more generous to that because I'm going to think of this as sort of an artistic expression, and I'm not going to be as critical about technical posing and lighting. You put it in the portrait category, I'm going to be like, well, that head's turned too far. The pupil's buried behind the nose. You know, your lighting is kind of, and that's going to be portrait.
And WPPI, there's a change. They've got environmental portrait, which I shoot, which is, you know, monks and people in different countries where you don't have control over anything. So the other question is, what happens if you've got a beautiful animal, a beautiful dog, and you comb its hair and make it look beautiful, and you consider that to be a portrait? Can you enter that into a portrait category?
Depends on the rules, but yes,
Okay.
if most affiliates don't have an animal category or a pet category, then they go into the portrait category, because technically it takes the same amount of effort and work, and you put the
Yeah.
same lighting
Okay.
and yeah, and
Okay.
you know, fine art pet portraits are freaking beautiful. I mean, they
Yeah.
do an amazing job.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is digital artistry. That's one of the categories that I think is a cool category. Is in digital artistry, one of the goals is, and I know it's PPC and all the affiliates, they want you to actually show your work. And so part of the thing about digital artistry is, one, the final image, but how hard was it for you to get there? And what elements did you use to assemble that image? So as a judge, the judges are going to look at, here's your final image. That's pretty amazing. But you built it out of these images. That's even more cool.
But
And
those
so
images that you built it out of, do they have to be your images, or can you buy them off the internet or use somebody else's?
well, again, that's going to come down to rules.
Oh, no, so ethics.
The
I mean, you could
competition.
say, I shot the
Ethics.
shot. Yeah, and you didn't. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there. Okay.
I would like everybody's images to be all their images and never somebody else's images every time.
Yep.
But I don't write all the rules for all the competitions. So
yeah, so PPC, that is the only category that allows purchased or third party someone else's images, as long as you have the rights to do so. Same goes for PPA, photographic artist competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something I like about PPOC, I don't know, Troy, if you know it, their creative category is actually split into people and non-people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Cool.
and part of the photographic artist is also restoration. So a lot of the restoration goes into the people category, in addition to digital painting.
So restoration of old people, that's what you're saying? I'm not liking this. Come on.
So we're getting close to wrapping this up. I mean, I think this is something that we could probably talk about for hours. And we do, by the way. we all talk to each other after competitions and be like, could you believe what that judge said? Like, what a, or I can't believe you got that score, Peter. Good for you.
Me neither. You. Yeah.
But it's a constant, it's a constant thing. So before we wrap up, do we have any more questions from anybody? Any more topics that are burning that we need to touch on before we go away? No?
Yay! They're all bored, shitless. They're done. They're all tired. They're finished.
Yeah.
And you're sleeping in your car up at Morro Bay. I mean,
I'm in Morro Rock. I still got to drive to San Simeon now.
Yeah, well, you got to stop sleeping in your car. That's what you need to do. You got to get out and make some money and get a hotel.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, hey, thank all of you guys for hanging out with us and all of the questions. April, thank you for speaking up and sharing your questions with us. That's always helpful for everybody. All you guys that are in here so far, I'm looking at all the names in the list. You guys all know who I am. You know who Peter is. You know who everybody is here. We're all here to help to make it work. Competition is one of those kind of things that it's incredibly frustrating. And those of us that have been through it, like, we know. I've retired from competition because it was so frustrating for me. And I decided to help on the back end and help run it and help get judges and help fix the things that I thought were broken.
You were told not to join competition anymore by your wife and your loved ones because of your bad attitude. But let's not bring that up right now.
Right. But I say that so that you understand that we all understand how challenging competition can be. However, it's very edifying. It's got a lot of growth options for you.
So love hate. You love it when you get good marks, good grades.
Right.
You absolutely hate everybody when you get 79s and 78s.
So before we end, last words from Michael, Rhino, and then Peter, I'll let you wrap it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and this kind of goes to April, and for those others out there who haven't entered into competitions and that, again, and again, I was sort of, maybe a little bit critical there, maybe certain categories, the way certain judges look at them, but having said all of that, it really has been so valuable to my photography. I'll say, just making me more creative, more observant whenever I go out there, and just overall improvement has really come from, critiques from Troy and Frederick, who was on here earlier, as well as, the other couple of clubs, affiliations that I belong to. I can't say enough about, as fearful as I was those first couple of times that I entered, the feedback that I've got from those ones, as well as all the way forward, other people's images, comments that come from those. Again, I'm really a big believer in just going forward with it, and set your ego aside for that evening or that day or whatever and so forth. Listen to what is said. Use that to your, going forward in terms of improving and thinking about it whenever you're either out in the field or wherever you're photographing, infants, or whether you're photographing people or whatever. Take what some of those comments are from the judges and that, and put those to use going forward. And as Peter was saying, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, take all of that and you will, I'm guaranteeing, become a better overall photographer from that. So I highly encourage it.
Peter, my friend.
It'll make you a better photographer, guaranteed. You've got to stick with it. I never thought in my wildest dreams that, that I could be on the front cover of PPA, become a diamond photographer, PPA, all of those things. But it comes from hard work, practice, enter, and just do it. You just got to do it. You can sit around for the next, 10, 20 years and say, I wish I did it, but get off your ass, get it done, enter, and just go with it, because you'll be shocked. If I can do it, and I'm handicapped, so anyone can.
Thank you, Peter. Just to sort of build on that, none of us did this by ourselves in a vacuum. We all had people that mentored us. We all had people that, told us that we were terrible and told us that we were great when we were great. And so it takes a community to kind of help. So whoever it is, find people around you. And even non-photographers, right? Even non-photographers are really good to show your work to and say, what do you think of this? You'd be amazed the stuff they point out that we missed and we should know better. So go do that. Yep. So again, thank you all for being here. This is being recorded. So I will eventually, in the next couple of weeks, I will get this up on IEPPV's YouTube channel. And that way, if you missed any part of this, or you want to go over and watch us again, I don't know why you'd want to see what we have to say again, but if you wanted to, you can, so it'll be there. So
and you're also saying that this is going to be available on Netflix in April, and it's a pay-per-view. It's not my commission. I'm not getting anything,
but not for the people attending. These people get to watch it for free because they're now all of our friends and they're special.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But everybody else, no. So thank you, everyone. Everybody have an amazing evening. Enjoy the rest of your, where are we at? We're Wednesday. Yeah. Wednesday. So we're going into the weekend. So enjoy your weekend. So.
Okay. Bye.
Yep, I will see all of you guys later. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So the goal really is to just sort of demystify, image competition for people that are new at image comp, or maybe afraid of image comp, or have had some challenges with it. Like Craig Stampfli, for example, he's reached out to me with a bunch of his images, and he's like, they didn't like it, why? And some of his is fine art nude, some of his is a little bit more abstract. And so I had to explain to him, that there's a lens that most of the judges look through. And so those are the kind of things that I want to chew on and sort of answer as a whole.
So part of the objective tonight then is also to encourage people, get them past that fear of first-time submissions, or if they have submitted and maybe haven't had the success that they're looking for, to again pay attention to judges, those comments that make sense, right? It's always subjective or whatever.
You can't be thin-skinned, and you will cry every time you put images in, because some is going to say this sucks, 79,
right.
78. And you go, that's
Right.
the most favorite picture of mine in the
Yep.
last 40 years,
Yep.
76.
Right.
Right,
But I
right. So
think-
it's a matter of putting that ego aside that we all have to do whenever we go into these
Not easy.
and again, take the take the advice, take the recommendations, and put those to use, and try to make your either that image better, or think about those things the next time you go out when you're out in the field shooting, or if you're in the studio shooting, whatever it might be. So, but that's part of the objective, right? Is to try and encourage people to move forward and get past that.
Plus, what I want to try to clarify, and it's this definition of what do the judges want to see, right? Because a lot of people think that competition is this linear process, that all good images are good images, and that's not true.
Mhm.
You know, you have a question here about like landscape categories and well-known iconic locations, and that's this inverse curve. Is that, oh, I've seen 100 images from Horseshoe Bend.
Right.
This is average. It may be gorgeous.
Yep.
But you have to expect that the judges are not going to actually respond to that. So, yes, Michael, you've got it absolutely perfect.
Because the nature question is one of the things that's been pissing me off for years. Is, you know, people take pictures of a giraffe or a monkey in a zoo.
Yeah.
And well, you know, that's not exactly right. That's a captive animal picture. It's not shot in the Serengeti. But, you know, you don't want to be too tough on these people because they're starting off. You want to encourage them to take photos.
Anybody can do that. You know, today I go out and I photograph a bobcat. It's the first one of those I've ever seen.
Nice.
And, you know, naturally.
Beautiful.
I would have to compete against somebody who went to something like
that I would love to talk on in a very non-judgmental way, because
that's where I was going to say. I'm not going to be.
It's like the article that I shared in the TWIP community about the landscape photographers, and you know they're showing images that do not exist in any world. You know, they built those, and I'm okay with the fact that they built those, but then it becomes to me like an illustrative image. Right.
This is coming up a lot, right? It's coming up also in the wildlife ones.
But it's like me in the wedding category. Right, is I took second place in the overall wedding category at WPPA. I was beaten by a gentleman who I admire dearly. He's a friend. My image was actually shot at a wedding under the constraints of an actual wedding. His was shot in a studio with a hand-drawn background. I choose now never to compete at PPA again, because they don't have a rule that says that I'm allowed, that, you know, that it has to be on an actual wedding day.
Yeah.
And so that's unfortunate, right? But that's their rules. And as long as you understand them, you can.
Well, WPPI is better with that. They have an actual day of the wedding.
Those are the kind of challenges that people that come into an image competition are going to be like, well, this image this is my best image on Instagram, or all my other photographer friends think this image is great. And then I enter it and the judge just destroys me. Well, that's not fair. You guys aren't running a good competition. And that's not really true, right? Like, there's a narrow lane.
It's
each competition has. Yeah.
Right.
Is there not some kind of clarity around the terms of engagement with this? You know, like, that's what it seems like is lacking. If that's the case, is there's got to be, you know, what can be included, what cannot be included, what must be included, what must not be included, so that people can go, oh, okay,
yes,
now I know what I'm dealing with.
Absolutely, there absolutely is, and this is really important, and this is one thing I hope we come back to. Some competitions have very open rules. PPA, for example, has got very generous rules. WPPI, for example, not at all. You have to submit in photojournalism. You have to submit the raw file. They review it. Peter's been questioned on many of his images because the ones that he shot of the monks and stuff, they're amazing. And the natural thought is, well, we think that you added those sunbeams or whatever. Nope, they're natural. Here's the raw file. So it depends on the organization. IEPPV, for example, we have some pretty strict rules about nature, landscape, animals in zoos can't be considered, you know, nature because they're not nature. You know, I mean, there's a lot. So I just wish that there was a more universal acceptance and terminology for an image that was actually captured in camera and then tweaked and tuned with darkroom techniques versus something that was built in Photoshop that somebody calls a photograph.
You know, it kind of comes down to how good are you in Photoshop sometimes too, right? On
Absolutely.
That's
but
how
there's
so
a lot
much
of
it is.
But there's a lot of training that goes into that also in that, right? I mean, you still have to get the lighting right in camera and in the studio and that, but it's like I said, there's a lot that goes on there. So
someone who's really good in Photoshop can rearrange and redo anything.